Today's interview is with Adrian of adrianscrazylife.com. Adrian is my first interview where she would not share her last name, which is totally fine, but isn't it kind of mysterious? But she likes to be private, so she goes by Adrian. And who doesn't want to talk to somebody who has a crazy life? I was so intrigued by her website and her story. Adrian is 60 and her sister is 72 and works for her. And they are hustlers. I tell you, they are hardworking, passionate people. I didn't meet her sister, but I heard a little bit about her. And I thought it was so cool what she does. And she spent 40 years in the corporate world, very similar to me. And she was a financial analyst. And she got to the point, she loved her career some of the time, but she got later into it, I think she had a horrible boss. I'm not sure we recorded that part. She told me about it. And she finally said, enough is enough. And she left. And I think it was within 3 months, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. So we talk about her journey. She dealt with it. She conquered it. She is now free of cancer. She is healthy. She had a very easy treatment, she said. And I find it interesting because I know that there's a tie between living a life where you're unhappy and miserable and you're doing it most of the time that you're awake, which is what she was doing. And she said she had the lump for a while in her breast. And this is for all of you out there who aren't dealing with a lump in your breast, because she said, I was too afraid of what I'd find out. And isn't that crazy? That's such a crazy mindset. And in hindsight, she didn't have a bad experience. And fortunately, they caught it in time. So she said she had this lump for a while. So I'm guessing it probably was while she was still working. And she finally ended up dealing with it. But then she was doing what she loved. She was creating a business that she was passionate about. And isn't it interesting how then she had an amazing treatment, never got sick from chemo. So it's like she stepped into who she was meant to be. And then the universe provided what she needed. So I love her story because of, not only that she followed her passion finally late in life, but she also conquered a hardship and came out on the other side even better. And what she said too is that in the pandemic, not only was she going through cancer treatment during the pandemic, but she was building a business. And she had these side hustles. She was always experimenting, but she wasn't earning enough money to replace her income when she retired. But she went all in and she committed to what she was doing. And she clearly served in a way that was needed. And people liked her. A lot of her work, she says, is on referrals. So here she had like an amazing year. And she is as busy as ever and as happy as ever. And so you got to listen to her story. It's a great one. I hope you enjoy Adrian, and let me know, leave comments, leave a review wherever you're listening from. Podbean allows you to leave comments. Apple allows you to just leave a review, or just DM me and let me know what's going on. And you can also go to notyouraveragegramma.com/podcasts and or podcast, no plural. And you can find very easily the show notes, because I have a lot of links in the show notes normally. So if you ever listen to an episode and you're like, oh, what's that show notes thing? Just go to my website and the links are there, because they're very easy to find there. I think different podcasting platforms, it's like, where in the heck are the show notes? I listened to podcasts for a long time before I could even find them on my Apple phone. So so that's the best place to get them. And enjoy the episode. Welcome to another episode of Not Your Average Lives. And I'm really excited about this guest because she is a crazy grandma like me out in the online world, delving after a long corporate life stint that she said she was miserable in. And I want to talk about that. But yes, she has a website, Adrian's Crazy Life. And so I love that because crazy is good. So
Yeah.
welcome to the podcast,
Well,
Adrian.
thank you
Yeah.
so much. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad to be here.
Yes. And so we're going to talk about tech because
Yeah,
you're not
I
afraid
love
of
tech.
tech. Maybe you were once, but you're not now and you help people with it. So
Yeah,
I want people our age to know to stop being scared of it and stop letting it be an obstacle.
yeah,
And I also love that you have your sister who works for you.
yeah.
So my son-in-law works for me. So it's like a family affair. It's so great when you work
Uh-huh.
with family, but your
Yeah,
sister is 12 years older than you.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah,
And, we're tearing it up, which I think is hilarious.
yeah.
We are busting out all the stereotypes. We're doing our thing and, helping people, and we love it. She's actually better at it than I am. She goes to town. And so I think that's awesome, you know.
Yeah, so she's 72, you're 60, so
Uh-huh.
you're the baby. And let's start by you sharing because you said you've had a website for 14 years. So
I
even
have.
though you were in this crazy rat race, you had this little side interest. I think
Yeah.
sometimes that keeps
Yeah.
us going, you know?
I got that from my mother. My mother
Hmm.
was very entrepreneurial, and she was always coming up with a new scheme or a new business or a new idea and whatnot. And hers were very unsuccessful. They just, but they were great. And she was going for it. And so I think I picked that up from my mother. And I've always had little side hustles. I've been doing side hustles for more than 20 years. So I
Mm,
was an eBay seller. I sold Tupperware. I sold Avon. I sold Pampered Chef. I was a demonstrator for Stampin' Up for 9 years. So I taught classes of card making and whatnot. So I've always had these little side hustles, but they haven't been that successful. And then, like 7 years ago, I started getting into this Pinterest thing. I had been blogging for a long time and I had to do Pinterest for myself. And I thought, well, I'm doing this and I think I'm pretty good at it. By then I had about 30,000 followers. And I thought, well, why not make a little extra money by doing this for other people? So I picked up 2 clients and then 3 clients and then 6 clients. And then by the time I left my job, I had 9 clients. And that was enough to replace most of my income and get me out of the rat race because I had hit a point. I loved my job until I didn't, and
mm.
then I got a horrible boss in a horrible situation. So I was just desperate to get out of the rat race. And I had, this little trap door here
Hmm.
that no one knew about. No one at work knew I ran a blog. No one knew that I was doing this business on the side. Nobody had any idea. And so they were completely shocked when I just said, okay, I'm out of here. I'm doing this. Bye. And they're like, wait a minute, what? You, they had no idea. They didn't even hardly know what a blog was. So I'm like,
And what made you start a blog? What was the reason
well, I
behind it?
originally started it as a craft blog because I was doing my Stampin' Up thing and I wanted a place to showcase the cards and the scrapbook pages that I was making. But that got boring after a while. I'm like, oh, here's what I stamped today. Here's what I stamped tomorrow. Here's what I'm going to stamp next week. And I was like, that's boring. So then I started throwing in things about my kids and whatnot. And it just kind of evolved into this blog. And at one point, I had 800 posts out there about all sorts of things. And then I started getting so much into the tech stuff that I felt like I needed to separate the two. And so about 5 years ago, I started my second blog, which is my tech blog, and that's Help for New Bloggers. And that has all sorts of advice on Pinterest and Facebook and building websites and getting traffic and all that stuff. So running
Yeah.
2 blogs is like having twins, and doing that plus having a full-time job. Plus, I was a chronic volunteer. I was a Boy Scout
Uh,
leader. I planned more than 50 campouts with anywhere from 25 to 70 scouts and adults. So for a while there, I was really going crazy, but I've got this like workaholic energy
yes.
where
Yeah.
it's not a matter of not saying no. It's not jumping out of my chair and going, I'll do it. I'll do it. you
Yeah.
know,
You're a doer. You're a
yeah, I'm a
doer.
doer.
You
I'm
like
a
to
doer. And
be
that's how I
busy.
get my energy. That's what I love. And I
Yeah.
love helping people.
Yeah.
That's fun for me.
Yeah.
And so
So,
if I can get people to pay me to help them, then that's even better.
yeah. So I have a question because
Yeah.
what I think is interesting from your story is you had this corporate career, but you were always seeking this thing on the side.
Yeah.
And in my work as a coach, what I've done and found with my students, because I want them to be lit up about
Yeah.
life, just lit
Yeah.
up about life. And sometimes people think, oh, I don't want my own business. I don't want to start a business. And it's not necessarily about starting a business. It's about finding that thing that
Yeah.
you like to do. And I mean, you said you liked your job some of the
Yeah.
time, and
I
I kind
did.
of was in there in that phase too.
Hmm.
But do you think, and what's your opinion on how these side things kept you lit up, even though you maybe weren't lit up in your day job that paid
Yeah.
you, but yet you kept being challenged by new things, you kept
Yeah.
exploring. Do you
Yeah,
think
I
that
always like to learn new things. I always like to do new things. And still, even in my business, I'm always like, well, I do this, but I also do this, and I'm looking at this, and I'm starting a course about this. I'm always wanting to explore new things. And I kind of have a policy, and this is an actual policy in my personal life and in my business life. If somebody offers you a chance to do something or some idea comes up, say yes. I say yes, and then I figure it out. Now, only if it's
mm,
something I want to do. If it's something
exactly.
I'm not
Yeah.
interested in, then it's a no. But, I've come across so many opportunities where, other people would hold back and, well, I don't know, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. I don't. I'm like, no, yes, I will do it. As soon as you offered me a chance to do this podcast, I said yes. This is my second podcast. I have no idea about the tech. I'm awkward on camera. I don't care. It's an opportunity. It's something fun. It's something new. I said yes. And
And
then I'll figure it out later.
yeah, and where do you think that came from? Do you think that like I think sometimes doing something that is unknown and scary,
Hmm.
it can be like a skill, right?
Yeah.
It's like the more you do things that are scary and then they come out okay,
Yeah.
the better you get at it, right?
Yeah. Well,
And
and I also think back to all the cool things that I did do because I said yes.
mm-hmm.
So I got to go to Washington, D.C. and lobby on behalf of a charity. I got to go to Congress and actually walk into their offices and talk to people about what I was trying to promote with this charity on Bill Gates's dime, and got to stay at a premier hotel a block from the White House. That was cool. If I hadn't said yes, I would have missed that whole thing. I got to go on a blogger cruise out in the middle of the ocean. We were in Cancun. We had an absolutely lovely time. I learned a ton of stuff, but I went on a cruise all by myself. No husband, no kids, no nobody. Only knew three people in the group, but I said yes, and I had a wonderful time.
Sounds
You
like a
know,
book. I think there's a book a guy wrote about doing a
yeah,
year of saying yes.
maybe
Yeah.
I've done lots of years of saying yes, and I've had a
Yeah.
chance to, do some really fun stuff because of it.
Yeah, you could
Yeah.
write a book. I love how gung ho and how you kept at it, and what's interesting is how it unfolded. And we talked about
Hmm.
before we started,
Yeah.
but before I pushed record, about you were there at your job for 27 years in
Hmm.
corporate banking kind of environment,
Yeah.
and you had this little side thing, and then it got to the point where you were miserable,
Yeah.
and you decided enough is enough, and
Hmm.
you because you had this little side thing you were working on, you thought maybe I can make a go of it. But
Yeah.
then the universe threw
Yeah.
a little
Then the universe
monkey
kind of
wrench, or yeah,
smacked me in
yeah,
the face. Yeah.
yeah.
I retired in June, and in October, I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer.
Hmm.
And so, I tell everybody, you think your 2020 was bad. Yeah, mine was pretty awful. So I
Yeah.
had a year of cancer treatments. I had chemo, I had radiation, I had a mastectomy, I had, all this stuff going on in addition to the pandemic. So my
Hmm.
husband and I both had three different surgeries between the two of us during the pandemic.
Wow.
So it's been crazy, but
So
you
this was
know,
the October before the pandemic, so you were
yeah,
diagnosed,
yeah.
and
So
was it a
this was October
mammogram?
2019.
Yeah. Hmm.
And then I started chemo in November.
Yeah,
And
right before
then,
Christmas too. Mm.
yeah, right before Christmas. And then all this, pandemic stuff hit, and, going through all this crazy stuff. But Actually, it was a good journey. I didn't have a terribly difficult time of it. It wasn't fun, that's for sure.
Hmm.
It had its struggles, but on the whole, I had a lot of support, I had a lot of help, and I did quite well with it. And now I'm considered cured. I'm, moving on with my life, trying to grow my hair back in, just working on stuff. But, it's just an interesting experience. And,
What'd you learn through the experience? And I'd love to know before you answer that, like, how
sure.
were you diagnosed? Because I think I always want to help people if they're not
Well, I
not getting
found
a
a lump.
mammogram or, oh, you
I
did.
found a
Okay.
lump and I waited way too long. I was
Mm,
terrified, terrified, terrified to go to the doctor. So I think that's why it was stage 2, because I
mm,
waited probably 4 or 5 months
mm,
before I went to the doctor.
yeah.
So I just kept saying, "Oh, it's just a cyst. It's a cyst. You're fine. It's okay." And it wasn't
Mm.
until my breast actually was out of shape that it was that big. So,
Okay. So the message
you know,
there is if you have a lump, make an appointment
yeah.
today.
Yeah, don't be
Yes.
such a chicken because it's not going to go away. But I think the thing that I learned, and this was a big learning experience for me through cancer, is you're not driving the bus.
Hmm.
You're not driving the bus. If the doctor says you have to have 4 treatments, you have 4 treatments. If he says 8 treatments, you have 8 treatments. If they say we're going to cut your breast off, you go, well, okay. You don't get to pick and choose. It's not something you can argue with. It's not something you can negotiate with. And that was a different experience for me because I'm used to, kind of working the margins. I'm used to negotiating things and working things out and, trying to get a better deal. And I was
Yeah.
not in charge. And
Yeah.
that was hard for me.
Yeah, I have a friend and she felt something and she said it was like a piece of rice, which I would
Hmm,
think wouldn't even, that doesn't even seem to me like a lump.
yeah,
But she said, and she
interesting.
avoided it at first, but then
Hmm.
a couple of things she saw, like, I think she saw an article about breast cancer that she never, like, normally she would never see it, or maybe
Hmm.
she saw it but never paid attention.
Yeah.
And she started paying attention and seeing things as whispers, like that's a
Hmm.
whisper. So her gut was saying, do something. And
Yeah.
it sounds to me like maybe your gut was telling you, but your brain was saying, oh
Yeah.
no, talking it yourself out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
I was
that's,
just so terrified of the process. I was terrified of the
mhm,
waiting
yeah,
because, you get this test, then you have to wait for the results. Then you get this test and you have to, and that whole first month is all waiting. And,
yeah,
I don't normally have high anxiety, but during a situation like that, I think everyone has high anxiety.
yeah,
And so I was afraid of the anxiety more than I was what they were going to find out. And to me, I never get sick. I never, ever get sick. So the
hmm,
idea that I could even possibly have cancer was like bizarre. That was
yeah.
the freakiest thing ever. I have no family history of it. It's just this weird, fluky thing that happened.
Yeah. But
But,
what I've
you
learned
know,
and I really believe now is how much there's a tie and how miserable you are to your health.
oh, yeah,
And
that's
what's
true.
interesting
The
is
stress.
you're
Yeah.
saying that you finally left your job because and even though you fixed the situation, there it was probably already there. It probably,
Yeah. Yeah. It was
come,
definitely there earlier.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you navigated that whole experience and
Hmm.
then had the best year in business, is what you
Yeah,
told
I
me.
know. That was shocking. The minute the pandemic hit, I thought, oh, this is it. I'm going to lose all my customers. This is terrible. I don't know what I'm going to do. We're going to be broke, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Am I going to have to go back to work? I had no idea. And not only did my customers stay, but I pretty much doubled my business during the course of the pandemic. Who'd have thought? You could have bet me any amount of money that that was never going to happen, but it did. And, so I went from 9 clients to now I think I have 21 clients. And, and now I have, assistants and whatnot that I hire and, we're doing all sorts of stuff and we're having a
What
great time.
so what do you think created this for you? Do you think it's because you were finally living what you were supposed to do, and so that was kind of the universe supporting that? What do you think it like,
That
can you
sounds like a good
pinpoint,
theory.
can you pinpoint anything?
Yeah, that
I
sounds
think
like a good theory. I have no
yeah.
idea.
Yeah, because I think when you are lit up about life and what you're
Hmm.
doing, it's like a magnet, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so are these
maybe.
like referrals where people are saying, "Oh, you've got to work with Adrian."
Yeah, yeah. I
Mhm.
actually partner with a lady who does SEO services. And so she sends a lot of business my way when people ask about Pinterest services and whatnot. So that's been such a blessing to my business and really has enabled me to grow. But then, yeah, I pick up clients here, there, and everywhere,
Mhm.
just,
Yeah.
sometimes I'll get three in a week and then sometimes I won't get one for a couple of months. So it just kind of evens out.
So, when we talk about the tech,
Mhm.
what do you think makes you so that like you're not feeling you're not the type of person that says, "Oh my gosh, it's so hard." So,
Oh,
what
no. I
so you
love that stuff.
and
I
so
love that stuff, and I
yeah.
always loved that stuff.
Okay.
I used to teach Excel classes. I used to teach Lotus 1, 2, 3 classes way back in the
Yes.
dark ages.
Yes.
I
Do you remember the
I
slash?
was
I was
yeah,
like, I remember when my first, like, my boss put me down in front of a computer to do it.
yeah.
And I remember she showed me how to get to the menu, but then I
Mhm.
forgot. Like, I remember the menu and I remember what to do when I got to the menu. I was like, how do I get the menu to appear? And it was like, oh, slash. You just hit the
Yeah.
slash key.
Yeah, no, I
So
remember
you
all
remember
that
that.
stuff,
Yeah.
and I was kind of the Excel expert in my department, which
Mm-hmm.
was hilarious because most of the people in my department were either way older or way younger than me. But,
Mm-hmm.
I just love digging into technology and doing all that stuff. And, I kind of like sort of rubbing it in the face of the stereotypes. They're like,
Yes.
oh, you're this little old lady. You're not going to do that. It's like when I meet people, I always wonder, what do they think? Do they think I'm a librarian? Do they think I'm an accountant? Do they think I'm a school teacher? Whatever. And they're totally surprised to find out that I build web pages and I do newsletters and I, do all this Pinterest stuff and
Yeah.
whatnot. So I kind of like surprising people with that.
Breaking the stereotype. Well,
Yeah,
it's your crazy life,
it
right?
is. It is.
It's
That
true
title
to
is so perfect for me.
when did you come up with that? Has that's been the
Back in
14 years, right?
2007 when I started everything, because at that point, I was doing all these different things and, my life was just very hectic and very crazy. And of course, I was raising my children, I was working, I was running this business. I don't remember if I was doing scouting back then, but, I've always had just a very busy, active, interesting life where I'm got my
Mhm.
fingers in lots of pies,
Now
you
how old
know.
are your kids now?
Older
Are
from
they do you have
20
uh-huh.
23 to 39.
Oh, okay. So you
Yeah,
are a grandma.
yeah, yeah, I
I
have
didn't even
4
ask you
4
that.
grandchildren.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, my
And
oldest
so
grandchild
mhm.
is 20 and my youngest son is 23. So that's
Uh-oh.
weird.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow. Well, you
yeah,
do. I mean, there's a almost 20 years age difference, right?
yeah.
Between your
My
kids?
sister and I are very spaced apart. Her children are very spaced apart, and my children are all about 10 years apart. So it's
Yeah.
just a weird dynamic how that worked. I had a
Yeah.
series of miscarriages between 2 and 3. So we felt
Mm.
like we were just lucky to get him, but it was hilarious because my stepson and I were both raising teenagers together.
Mhm.
So that was kind of a weird experience. And, I'd go on the field trips and they're like, oh, Blake's grandma came along for the field trip. And I'm like, no. Blake's mom came along for the field trip.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, I know that
Yeah.
happens a lot nowadays because people
Hmm.
wait or people are waiting now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and so you have kids. What do they
Hmm.
think? Are they tech? Do they come to you for help or do you go to I mean, I still ask my kids stuff like the whole TikTok thing. I never was
Yeah.
on TikTok, but now Instagram has those reels. So
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, how do you do these? So I still go for
Yeah.
help
No, I
sometimes.
think because they're boys, they're not really
Yeah.
into the
Okay.
tech or the social media. If they were girls, they'd probably be more into that sort of stuff. But
Yeah.
they more often come to me than I go to them.
What made you get into as like you were a financial analyst? Early in my
Yeah.
career, I was like, I think I was called a junior financial analyst, but it really
Hmm.
wasn't anything I stuck with. I
Yeah.
branched into more training and technical writing and then project management.
Hmm.
So is it financial? Is that something that you were just gifted at? You fell into? Did you go to college for that? How did you end up doing that?
Yeah, I did go to college, but that's kind of hilarious because I went to college in 1985. And back then, they didn't even have computers. I mean, I
Mm.
took my first programming class on punch cards.
I
That's
had
how
worked
old
for
I
a
am.
company where I did
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
I remember the days when you had one computer and the office had to share time on it. So
Yes.
I can't imagine what I would have learned in 1985 that would be of any use whatsoever today. So I basically only have a high school diploma.
Mhm.
But, I was so interested in spreadsheets. Love, love, love spreadsheets, love databases, love taking huge, 50,000 data records and teasing the secrets out of it and analyzing it. And hey, did you know that this is costing you this? Did you know that this is doing this? I love doing stuff like that. So I just kind of worked my way into that. I was in the telecom realm. And so I was managing but by the time I left, I was managing $3 million a month worth of phone bills. And so I would get, massive databases and I would find mistakes and I would be
Mhm.
like, you owe us $30,000. You owe us $80,000. You need to fix this. And I saved them $5 million over the course of several years. And, I won a trip and an award and all this stuff. So that part of it was super fun. But
Yeah,
then
I'm a
when it
big fan of this,
changed,
Jonathan Fields has a spark type, or I think it's called, he pronounces it Sparketype test.
yeah.
And I make my students do it because, well,
Hmm.
it's one of the lessons because I think it's a very informative, but
Yeah.
I'm just guessing from listening to you that you are somebody who likes puzzles, to solve
Hmm.
puzzles.
I do.
You
Yeah.
and
Have
yeah,
that
you help
analytical mind.
people. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm also high in communication.
Mhm.
I love people. I'm a raging extrovert. And
Yeah.
so, I like connecting with people. I love to go to blog conferences and things and just talk and share and teach people and hook up with
Yeah.
people and network. That's like my happy place. And for
Yeah.
most people, that's terrifying to them.
Yeah.
So, this pandemic has been really hard. The extroverts are loving it. My daughter-in-law is this little extrovert and she's happy as a clam that she doesn't have to talk to people or be around people. And I'm like, I miss people. I was like, I'm going to start a book club and I'm going to do this and I'm going to go here and I'm going to travel and I'm going to,
Yeah.
because I've really missed
I
people.
get that. I get that because
Yeah.
I'm the same. We just went to Florida for a few
Yeah.
days, and Florida is pretty open in terms of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And we were at a place that had an outside bar area,
Hmm.
very large. And
Yeah.
I just felt like, oh my gosh, people.
I
Somebody sat
know.
next to me at the bar, and I was like, oh, a new friend. It's
Isn't
like
that
it's been so
nice?
long since I've experienced this.
Yeah,
So
we just
yeah,
booked a trip to Alaska. So
yeah.
we're going to take a 10-day trip through Alaska and meet a bunch of people probably.
But yeah, you
So,
struck me as, because you said you went on a cruise and you really
yeah.
didn't know anybody, and
Hmm.
that's exactly what an extrovert would do. I
Yeah.
remember went to a conference and just booked a flight and didn't know anybody, but I had the
Yeah.
best time because I met
Oh,
new
yeah.
people. And I think sometimes when you're with people, then you don't meet other people. You restrict
Yeah.
yourself.
Well,
Yeah.
that's actually my strategy. When I go to a conference, I book the biggest room I can afford and then I advertise for roommates. And I end up
Ah.
with all sorts of people that I've never seen before in my life and I'm sleeping in a bed with them. Why not? And we have a great time. And I'm friends with all the people from all the past conferences that I've been
Uh-huh.
roommates with.
Yeah.
So that's a
Yeah.
great way to meet people.
It is a great way to meet people.
Yeah.
I've done that too, funny
Uh-huh.
thing, but it's usually been in a circle that like a group of people, and then I'm like, "Oh, I need a roommate," but it's not a total, like, random person, but
Yeah.
yeah. You also have to be careful because I got really sick one year,
Oh,
and I felt so
really?
bad because I had a cold,
Yeah.
and I
Probably
felt
gave it to
like, oh,
everybody.
I felt bad for the people that were I was exposing to, and now with COVID, it's like, "Ugh." Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So
changed a lot.
yeah, yeah. So tell me what, like, if somebody is in a corporate job that is
Hmm.
listening and they're not real happy, what
Yeah.
would be your recommendation as to, some people, this was me. I had, my kids were my hobby. So I never
Hmm.
had an external outlet. And you've had this external outlet for a long time.
Yeah.
And as my kid, and when then my kids left, and I was
Hmm.
like, oh my God, my world is over, even
Yeah.
though I had a job and that kept me busy. So, but it wasn't lighting me up. So I didn't have that as I just was like lost where to begin. I didn't know where to start. And
Hmm.
fortunately, over time, I found something. So
Yeah.
what would be your recommendation for somebody who's in that place?
My recommendation would be to find something that you like and start it. Start
Hmm.
small and don't wait. Don't wait for permission. Don't
Mm,
feel like you have to have a degree. Don't feel like you have to be certified. If you know something, you know it. And if you feel like you know something that you can share with other people, then do it and start small and just build it up as you go and see what happens. And that way, if it does bomb, you've still got your job to fall back on. But if it takes off, then that can be this little escape hatch for your job. And the other thing that I really liked, money's very important to me. Money's a big thing for me. And I hated the idea of having to wait for a payday. And I hated the idea that some random person who didn't even know me got to determine how much money I could make. And I
mm,
love the idea that with these little separate businesses, I'd have money coming in just randomly all throughout the month. And I might wake up one morning and hey, I've made 180 bucks. Or I might wake up, oh, I made 30 bucks today. Oh, hey, this sold, that sold. So
mhm,
I've got a lot of these passive streams of income. So, in between the paydays, I still had money coming in.
mm,
So I always had money to do what I wanted. If I wanted to go to lunch, I could go. If I had to fill up gas in my tank, I could do that. If I found a new outfit that I wanted, I could buy it. And so I think that outlet was really nice for me and really a big incentive for me to be able to make as much money as I wanted. And
yeah,
that's the nice thing about the freelance lifestyle. Once you get it into gear and get things working, then you've got money raining down on you all the time. And then you can decide what you want to do with it, how you want to spend it, how you want to manage it. But you can't do that in a corporate lifestyle where you've got a set paycheck and that's all the money that you get and you only get it every 2 weeks. And that to me just felt so restrictive. I didn't like that.
yeah. And
So
you have a
it's
title
much
which can
happier.
only make so much, and kind of the sky's the limit in
Yeah.
the entrepreneurial space. You
Yeah. But
decide, right?
when I left, they replaced me with 3 people.
Oh,
3. That's how much work I was doing that they had to hire 3 people to replace me, and I'm thinking, if you just paid me what you were paying these 3 people, I probably would have stayed.
mhm,
And if you'd showed me more appreciation for the $5 million I saved you, if you'd given me 5% of that, I probably would have stayed.
mhm,
But they weren't interested in doing any of those things.
yeah,
So I think that was a real eye opener that no matter how hard I worked, and especially because I was a woman and an
mhm,
older woman, there were definite limitations on how much money I could make. And that
mhm,
was frustrating to me.
yeah, yeah,
So now I don't have that. I
yeah,
can make as much money as I want to make.
yeah. So I also heard
Yeah.
one other thing that I think
Hmm.
you would recommend, and that is
Yeah.
to say yes.
Yes. Yes. That
Say
is
yes. To
that
not
is
say
just a
no,
part
unless
of
it's
my
yeah,
philosophy.
yes.
Whenever somebody suggests something, if it sounds the least bit interesting,
Mhm,
I immediately say yes.
mhm,
And then I figure out how to do it.
yeah,
You know, you don't have to wait. People feel like, well, I'm not qualified. Well, I'm not this. Well, I don't know about that one.
yeah,
When someone offers you something and it sounds like it might be fun,
mhm,
go for it.
yeah,
If you have a chance to go on a cruise and you could go, even if you have to go by yourself,
yeah,
say yes.
yeah,
I couldn't afford to take both my husband and I, so I went.
yeah,
And I didn't know hardly a soul on the ship. I knew 3 people out of the whole ship.
yeah,
I don't care. I had a
yeah,
great time. There were a couple of times when I felt a little awkward, a little odd, but most of the time I was having a ball, you know?
yeah,
And there's
yeah,
so many opportunities that have come along as being a blogger.
mhm.
I was an Olympic volunteer.
Oh,
I
neat.
was an Olympic mascot. I was one of the 3 Olympic mascots. So I'm running around in a huge bunny costume, but I got to go to all the cool parties and I got to meet all the elite athletes. I met like 6 or 7 gold medal athletes. I did a photo shoot with Christy Yamaguchi. I got to
Oh,
go to all
I
these
love
cool
her.
places
I like
just
Skater.
because I was willing to put on a stupid bunny suit and run around.
That's
You
great.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I said
Yeah, and
yes.
the saying is forget the how for now, and
Yeah,
people do
forget
get
the how for
stopped
now.
by how. Just
Yeah,
say
don't worry about
yes,
that.
and
Don't worry
it'll
about that. The universe will provide the how.
yes,
Once you
yes,
say yes, it'll just work.
yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
So true. So true. Well,
Yeah.
you've been an inspiration. I love, next time we talk, we'll have to have your sister on. She's
Yeah.
a real
Oh, that'd
inspiration.
be
Yeah,
fun. Yeah.
yeah.
She's never done a podcast either. That'd be
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, what does she do for you?
She manages some of my clients for me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you got
Yeah.
her into this, and she's
Yeah. Well,
enjoying
she had
herself?
just retired and she didn't really have, plans in place and didn't have a good financial stream and needed some extra money. And I was dying at that point. I really needed some help. So I was like, hey, can you help me? And she's like, well, I don't know. I've never tried this. And I don't even know what it is, but yeah, okay, I'll try. So she said yes. And, we sat down a couple of times at the computer and taught her how to do all the stuff. And yeah, she's better at it than I am. She goes to town.
And what's her
Yeah.
background?
She managed medical offices for
Okay.
years and years and years and years. Yeah, she's
Yeah.
even more of a workaholic than I am. Yeah, she's off the charts. She didn't even take a day off for our parents' funerals.
Oh, wow.
I mean, she fell at work and broke her arm in 3 places. They taped it up, and she went back and finished payroll before she went to
Oh,
the Instacare. I
oh my
mean, that's
goodness.
that's the level of workaholism that we seem to have
Oh,
picked up, and
oh,
it's, maybe
well,
not as healthy as it could be, but
yes, yes, yes.
yeah.
So, well, thank you so much for joining
You're
today.
welcome.
And I
Thanks for
am so
having me.
happy that you are past your health scare
Yeah, me too.
and that you have had your best year and more to come. And I
Yeah.
hope that, yeah, you continue to say yes.
Well, thanks. Thanks. Me too. All
Now I'm
right.
going to
Thanks
have
for
to say
having me.
yes more because you've influenced me so
I know.
much.
See? Say yes.
Say yes. Thank you so much for tuning into the Not Your Average Lives podcast. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe on iTunes if you have an Apple device. You can find free resources and learn what else I have going on at the moment that might interest you on my website at notyouraverage.grandma.com. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook at Not Your Average Grandma. If you liked this episode, it would make my heart so happy if you could leave me a 5-star rating. You can also add a review to let me know what you like about this podcast, which will help spread the word about it to others who need a little midlife inspiration. As always, be you, listen to your inner voice, and focus on reigniting that lost spark so you can start living your own, not your average life.